Hello everyone, welcome back to iExamB. So in this video we are going to look at the various questions that came in the RBI DEPR 2023 phase 2 examination. We'll do an exam analysis. So broadly, by looking at the question, it was a very easy examination but a very lengthy one. So most of the things you had already covered in the phase 1, just that you had to write questions in a descriptive format, and more or less things were expected. So this year, because they had changed the pattern and no 3-marker or 4-marker questions were there, unlike in the previous years, so they had asked those 3-marker, 4-marker questions in your descriptive examination for phase 2. So for instance, there were questions on Leontief model and linear programming and ISLM numerical question, long numerical question. So all these used to be tested earlier in the phase 1 examination, but because they had done away with 3-marker and 4-marker questions, they have tested you on these in the phase 2. So this was expected. So mostly there were expected questions only, and no major, in fact no question from time series and Bayesian econometrics, all these panel data econometrics appeared in the examination, so which was a good relief for many of the students, because this is a really advanced econometrics topic and most of you have not covered it in your post graduation courses. So let's start with the video and let's look at, so first we'll look at the paper 1 descriptive economics, microeconomics and macroeconomics module. So first question was on consumer equilibrium through indifference curve approach, that is the ordinal approach. You were given various, so this is a memory based question. We have tried to collate all the questions. We do not have the exact figures that were asked in the question, but the topics you can have an idea about what they test on. So budget line shifting price and income changes, something on those lines were asked. Then there was another question on producer equilibrium, laws of returns to scale. All these things were asked to explain using isoquants. So what is returns to, so how do you show increasing returns to scale, constant returns to scale and diminishing returns to scale using isoquant. So that depends upon how far the two isoquants are from each other. That will show whether there is increasing returns to scale or decreasing returns to scale. So there was a question here on that. Then on another question on Arrow's impossibility theorem and social welfare function. So Arrow's impossibility function, the main thing that is required to be mentioned is UPID, that is unrestricted domain, Pareto optimality, independence of irrelevant alternatives, and this is non-dictatorship. So these 4 axioms are the main important ones, that given transitivity it is impossible to satisfy all these 4 axioms together. So we had also asked you a similar question on this in the test, phase 2 mock test. So whenever there is Arrow's impossibility theorem question, and how do you relate it with social welfare function, what is the modification of same, all these are tested around it. So this was there. Then there was a question on monopolist, long run and short run equilibrium. Various things were mentioned and you were tested on the long run and short run equilibrium. So all these are covered through questions and the notes also in the course. Then there was a question on AS and AD model, and you were asked to differentiate between the classical aggregate supply curve and the Keynesian aggregate supply curve. So basically classical is vertical, and you were asked to differentiate between the Keynesian aggregate supply curve. Then the next question was on ISLM numerical, and the definition of ISLM, all these things were asked. So we have also covered numericals on ISLM at various places. We gave it in the mock test also, a similar question. Then there was question on big push theory and its criticism. So criticism of the theory we have already covered in the course in the notes in detail. There was a question from international trade, some endowment and relating to offer curve for 2 countries. We don't have the exact question yet, but this particular topic, so this is anyway an important topic from international trade theory. There was this question from offer curves. So these were the questions which were in paper 1. So all basically, if you look at all the important topics, they had good coverage from each and every topic, and basically question was also from international trade, growth and development, consumers and producers theory. So all these are important broad topics, and they had tested you, they had given you a sufficient number of options. So basically, you, out of these 8 questions given, you had to attempt in total 5 questions, 2 from each section, section A and section B, and 1 can be from either of the 2 sections. Then the paper 2, which was on quantitative methods and Indian economy module, had questions from, so you were given a numerical question. So basically all the long numerical questions which were usually generally there in 3-marker and 4-marker questions in the phase 1 have now been tested in the descriptive examination. So there was a question on cross price elasticity of demand. Several values were given, and you had to find the elasticity question on demand, elasticity of demand for monopoly. Then there was a question, numerical question on average and marginal cost. You had to find output. So there were various subparts to this question. Then there was a question on probability. Binomial distribution is a very important question. It's always there. It was there in phase 1 also, and they had tested you on phase 2 also. So 5% effective items probability were mentioned, and you had to find these probability, no defective, at least 1 defective, exactly 2 defective items. So we have covered these under various questions. Then you had to explain mutually exclusive dependent independent events with examples. Then there was a question on Marshall Edgeworth box and Fisher index. We don't have the exact question, but something on this was asked. And splicing in index number. So how do you use splicing? So basically, if the base has shifted, right, and from one particular year to another, then how do you use the method of splicing to find index numbers? All these things were asked. So this, we have also covered a question on this in one of our section tests on this. Then there was a question on finding OLS equation. Use normal equations. You were given values for price and quantity. You could simply apply. Then you had to calculate TSS, ESS, RSS, R square, right, and check for significance from the T table. Values were given, and you had to check the significance of the hypothesis from the T table, whether you reject it or not reject it. Then questions were from Leontief and linear programming model. So Leontief, so you were given inter-industry transactions table, and basically you had to find out, you had to solve the input-output model. It was a 2x2 matrix that was given, right, and you had to find whether the solution exists for the system or not using the Leontief input-output method. Then there was a question on linear programming. It's a case of 3x3. You solve it using the simplex method, not the graphical one. So although we had covered a LLP, but this one was using the graphical method. But this one in the exam they had asked using the simplex method. Okay, so this was there. Then there were question on RBI monetary policy, inflation targeting. So we had not the exact question, but we had some questions around the topic in the mock test related to the role of monetary policy and in managing the Indian economy. Then there were questions on regulations to fiscal stability, note on banks' profitability and how it helps in financial stability. Another question was on what is the situation of growth and employment after COVID. So COVID-19 pandemic, this I had also told many times in the class also, that the impact of COVID-19 pandemic is still important and can be tested upon. We had given a question on the similar lines. This was regarding global financial crisis and COVID-19 pandemic. So basically it was a comparison of the two. In that sense this question was there. but there was a question here on the pandemic, straightforward. Then there was a question on inflation, how it's a risk to growth momentum, India's growth momentum. And there were questions on employment. We had given what is the status of the quality of employment and all of that. We had covered it through different questions. Then there was a question on recession and impact on the economy, what is capital flight and its impact on equilibrium and interest rate. So these were the major questions broadly that were asked in the examination, broad topics, and we had tried to cover some of those through questions and notes and videos. So I hope you could attend the exam well, and hopefully you should definitely start preparing for the interview as well. So if you have any other issues, if you want any guidance, you can call us here on this number and we will assist you for the interview. Thank you.